Hello and welcome. My name is James Bargeron and I'm a performance coach and trainer focusing on developing our performance and our mindsets. And when I was asked to put something together for this, I wanted to put something together that was both relevant, especially now with what we're facing, but also something that was practical that we could use in our lives once we'd actually finished watching this, something that we could use in a practical sense, both in our personal and professional lives. So I hope you enjoy the presentation on failing forward and how we can use failure to actually improve our results. It's something that I think is really needed at the moment because there's an awful lot of uh, focus on the negativity and things like that. Without any further ado, let's dive into the material and see what we're going to be focusing on here today. The three areas we're going to be looking at is, first of all, why people fail. And I know the obvious is that people fail because they stop doing what they're doing, but it's more the reasons behind that that we're going to be looking at, and the psychology side of it and how our minds work, because at the end of the day, they control everything. And often we don't give our minds enough attention to find out really what's going on behind the background. I know from my point of view, we won't ever really taught this. And also, we're going to be looking at how we can work with our minds rather than fight against it. And I know for a lot of the clients I've worked with, both business-wise and also in sports-wise, especially golf, a lot of them, they can hit the golf ball, but the problem is between their ears, that mental fight that they have, and I think that the harder they try and the more angry they get, they're going to get things sorted. But quite the opposite is true. So let's have a look at a few things in a second. But before we do that, I just wanted to share a little bit about who I am and what's given me the opportunity to speak with you today. Is, as I said, my name is James Bargeron, and I spent 3 decades in the arena of high performance, in shipping in particular, and shipping oil. I used to negotiate these contracts that were for the transport of oil on oil tankers, ranging between 30 and 100,000 tons in size, which is quite a lot of oil, to be honest with you, and also a lot of machinery. And so we would negotiate with a lot of the world oil companies around the globe, both in the UK and overseas, such as BP, Shell, Exxon, Texaco, Mobil, and the likes, when they were around. And also with some of the world's leading oil trading companies that would buy and sell oil for making money, basically, in order to supply the oil companies. But also with the ship owners around the world, a lot of the international Greek ship owners, the Norwegians and others that had these big fleets of vessels to transport the oil. And at 22, I was one of the guys who was instrumental in setting up a boutique brokerage in London here. And over the period of time of being in that industry, I've negotiated contracts totaling probably something around about $500 million. And the thing about all of this is the rosy side to it, but the reality is that I've done all of this and I've been a failure, because we don't ever become successful without having for failures and made mistakes. And believe me, I've made plenty, and now isn't the time to go into all of those. But I've failed big time, and I've also failed small time. So in order for us to actually move forward, we need to learn how to use that failure as opposed to let it, govern our lives. So without further ado, let's have a look at the problems. The big problem I established over the years is that mistakes and failures are construed as the same thing, but they're not. Mistakes are things that we do as we go along to learn. When we're a child, we make mistakes when we're learning to walk, but we don't get chastised about it. But the funny thing is, when we go to school, I remember being at school, getting all these big red X's down the left-hand column of, my English or my maths book. And when we did that, the focus was on, oh my God, look at all the mistakes I failed. And we were we weren't ever told the difference between the two is that if we thought we'd made mistakes, is that we had failed. But the reality is that failures are completely different from mistakes. Failures are when we stop doing something, mistakes, or something that we keep repeating on if we don't learn from them. And what we want to do is be able to learn from those mistakes so that we don't make them again, obviously. Because as Einstein once said, is that we keep doing the same thing over and over again, then it's a sign of madness if we're expecting to get a different result out of it. Also, we're led to believe, and we're taught, that we must succeed at all costs, that winning is everything. And that's not really logical, because not everybody can win. Not everybody can be successful. We have to look at what success is, because everybody has a different idea of success, and that's the big problem, that we're often living according to somebody else's agenda, somebody else's idea of what success is looking like, which is why you have so much of this pressure with social media and outside influences, where everybody's expecting, us to be successful, and we're looking at what other people are thinking about what we're doing, which is why there's all this pressure, to be successful and go after things that we don't always need, to have the big car, the flash car, all the bling and everything else as one aspect of it, to appear to be successful, because that's what we believe other people think about us. It's a huge problem. And so also, we have something like 60,000 thoughts a day, and not all of those thoughts are actually moving us forward. I can tell you, a lot of the people I've worked with and a lot of people I've hung around with previously, they certainly weren't thinking on things that were going to move them forward. All you need to do is to go in any pub these days, well, not at the moment because they're closed, but before that was go into any pub or look on social media and just look at the negativity that people are just talking about all the time. And it's certainly not moving them forward. And we hear the word no 30 times more than we hear the word yes by the time we're 17. So imagine you hearing something, you hear a song, you hear it once, oh yeah, hear it twice, oh, it starts becoming more frequent in your mind. You start memorizing it. Imagine hearing one particular song 30 times more than another. Guess what that's going to do to your mind? Yeah, exactly. Which is only going to be more of those 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a thought, approximately, one thought every 1.5 seconds. That's an awful lot of thoughts, especially negative. Certainly not going to be moving us forward. And also, we think that everything comes down to talent. That, oh, I have to be talented in this, I have to be talented in that, and I have to be talented in everything to be successful. But the thing is that we believe that our talent is fixed. But that's the mindset that's wrong, is that we believe that we're born with the fixed talent. We're born with this talent that in order to be a professional footballer, or we're born with this amount of talent to be a dancer or whatever else it is. But that's not true. It's been proven that talent is something that can be developed. Yes, some people are born with more natural ability, but talent can be nurtured. As in the Brazilian footballers, they weren't always born with, football boots on their feet. They developed the talent over many, many hours, and that's where the 10,000 hours that people talk about in order to become an expert is. And the same with gymnasts in, Russia and in the East European countries over the years. It's proven that they've nurtured these talents and developed the talents over a number of years. It's not something that they were all naturally born with. And that's something that holds us back, because we don't ever believe that we can achieve that, so we don't ever try it. The result brings a lot of fear of failure, fear of what other people will think, fear of what other people may say about us, that, because we aren't successful or we don't succeed and we failed. which is causing doubts in our minds. And to be honest, it's said that doubt causes more trouble and more failures than failure itself does, to be honest with you, because people don't even try it. And insecurity. We become insecure because we don't actually believe we're capable of things. And that's why there is so much struggle and trouble around the world, especially in the Western world. In the US, they say that the figures are something like 40 million people are struggling with anxiety issues. And in the UK, it's something like 1 in 4. You know, that's a huge amount, all down to these fears, doubts, and the insecurity, because our minds are controlling us rather than us controlling it. And so let's have a look at how this all pans out. This is how our thoughts lead to a feeling, which leads to a decision. And that decision will lead to us taking action. And that action will ultimately, bring us a result. I'll give you an example. Somebody that decides that, I'm gonna get fit. And so they feel like, I want to get myself a beach body. So they decide, they're going to join a gym. But guess what? They don't go to the gym every day. And the result is they don't get the beach body that they're after. And they end up looking like this and feeling like this, as opposed to the person who, decides that they want to achieve it. And guess what? So how does that work? Well, let's go back. So say we've decided that we want to get fit. We've eaten too much at Christmas time. We've put on too much weight and we're not happy with ourselves. So we make that decision. We tell everybody, right, you know what? I'm not really happy with it. I want to get fit. I feel like getting fit, and that's it. I'm going to get fit in the new year, and I'm going to go and get that beach body by spring. January the 3rd comes after all the festivities is over, and it's time to go back to work and the reality. So you wake up, the alarm goes off at 6 o'clock in the morning, time to get up and go to the gym. It's dark, it's raining, it's miserable. So you get up and you look out the window. What do you see? Miserable, dark morning. The reality is that you don't really like the look of what you see. So you think to yourself, that doesn't look too good. And so that brings on a feeling that you don't want to go out in the rain. You're feeling pretty anti going out in the rain. So what do? You feel like the bed's a lot nicer. So you decide, I'm not going to the gym today. What are you going to do? So then you decide, that's it, I'm not going. And you end up, the action is you go back to bed and have another hour's sleep and you feel all nice and snug. And then when you get up and go to work, the result is that you haven't gone and got yourself to the gym, you haven't worked off the calories, you haven't built your muscles, and you haven't done what you said you were going to do, which is going to, as I say, lead to end up feeling like this instead of feeling like that. It's all about the thought, the process that we go through. And the thing is that we can often get derailed. Why do we get derailed? Well, it comes down to how our mind works, our mindset. And the mind is designed in a way to keep us safe. That's the way it's evolved over thousands of years. That's its number one target and goal, is to keep us safe. So, for example, if we have been down somewhere in a high street and we've experienced something that feels like a threat, it's a dark evening and we feel unsafe, that there's somebody out there that may mug us and may want to take our handbag or whatever, and not my handbag, but take our handbag. I think you get the meaning. And our mind is looking out for things because it feels a danger. And when that happens, it's going to release the chemicals and sends around the body that is going to keep us on alert. It's the fight or flight syndrome. When we do that, it helps us to shut down all but the most vital organs so that we can actually get away from the danger. It wants to keep us safe. And so how does that affect us insofar as what we're doing? Well, if we go through an experience and we experience something like failure, and again, we're concerned with that, we're told that failure is wrong, guess what? That's going to feel painful. It's going to feel unpleasant. It's not a nice experience. And so we're going to feel that as a threat. The same way as if somebody's going to make fun of us because we're going to look stupid to people. And when that happens, the mind's going to send out, uh-oh, remember that. We don't want to go and experience that again. So it's going to stop us from actually doing those things because it wants to keep us safe. And also, the mind likes habits. And whether they're good or bad, it doesn't realize it. It's just going to develop the habit over a period of time. So if we just keep repeating the same thing, i.e. a thought, a negative thought, then the mind's just going to keep doing that all the time. And when we do that, we go back to what we were saying about those, approximately 60,000 thoughts a day, repeating the same process. When we keep thinking the same thing, we get the same feelings, and we get the same feelings, we're going to get the same decision and the same actions. And so we just keep repeating the same thing because it keeps us away from doing anything that's going to cause this pain and this failure, this fear of failure that's going to stop us from actually moving forward. Also, the mind needs instructions, because if we don't give it instructions, as I say, it's just going to keep doing things habitually. We need to tell our mind what to do. So if we want to set up a new business, we have to decide what it looks like. Be crystal clear on that. And if we're not crystal clear on it, well, the mind's just going to go back to its habits. Do what's easy. Keep us safe. No, don't go and try something. That's going to be too challenging. Because if it's going to be too challenging, it's going to bring up that pain environment again, which obviously it's going to try and stop us to do by bringing up excuses. That's a great way. Procrastination. They're the sorts of things that it will throw up to stop us from doing those things. So we don't experience that failure that we're talking about. And Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, said that unless we step forward into growth, we're going to step back into security. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, is that's our mind. It's going to go back into what's familiar rather than go into something that's going to challenge us, challenge us to grow as we go through it. But we need to instruct it what to do. Because if we don't, failure can either define us or it will inspire you to succeed. And that's the problem. With all of these thoughts about failure, that we've been led to believe that it's wrong and that we are defined by our failures rather than learning from them. If we can flip that round and turn it into an inspiration or a motivator, what we've learned from something, then we have a far greater chance of actually succeeding at something. But we need to reframe that. We need to look at failure as something, what did I learn from this? Or what did I learn from those mistakes? Rather than looking at ourselves as a failure. And when we do that, we start changing our beliefs. And this is a prime example of, probably the greatest, if not the greatest basketball player of all time is Michael Jordan. He was told when he was a teenager at school in North Carolina that he wouldn't really make it in basketball. And I don't mean as a professional. He was told he wouldn't make it at school. He wasn't even going to get on the varsity team over in the States, let alone become a basketball player at college and then go on into the NBA and become probably the greatest player, as I say, in the world. So why did he? He could have accepted their sayings, their thinking that he wasn't good enough, taking on their beliefs and let it define him that he'd failed to get in the team. Or he could use that as a motivation, as an inspiration to actually prove them wrong. And that's the big difference, is he believed in his own belief. And he got somebody that believed in him. And that's where the real magic happens, is when we get somebody else that believes in us, not just ourselves. Because if we can't get somebody that's going to believe in us, it can be a challenge doing everything on our own. But belief is really where the magic happens, and belief drives our behaviors. All we need to do is look at our results, and that will tell us, because it will indicate what we're actually doing according to our beliefs. And in order for us to be successful, as I just said with Michael Jordan, Sachiro Honda said, success is 99% failure. And I know from my own experiences that I grew through a business making so many mistakes. And the problem was I didn't always learn from those. And now, having gone through many, many different failures, realizing how we use those those failures to build on success, is where the real difference is, rather than, as I said, allowing it to define us. That's where all the difference is. Changing the way we see things and changing the way we actually look at it, our perception, is probably the greatest thing we need to do, which will help us develop those beliefs. So I hope you've enjoyed this short presentation on how we can actually use failure and look at failure from a different way, and use it to work with our minds to tell us what we want to achieve, and use failure to become more successful, rather than having it, beat us up and not help us from a mental point of view, because there's too much stress and anxiety already in the world. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you have, here are my contact details. I'd love to connect with any of you, either on LinkedIn or Instagram. Thanks very much again for your time, and keep safe.